Broadcasting from the campus of Salisbury University, this is WSDL Ocean City, NPR News Talk 90.7, putting Delmarva first. It's time for Delmarva Today with your host, Don Rush.
It's been sometimes a tumultuous time with rapid shifts in allies, and no one can say that the tenure of Mayor Jim Ireton has been not eventful. Welcome to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. Jim Ireton was elected as mayor of Salisbury in 2009. He was part of an apparent coalition that focused on neighborhood needs, and he replaced Mayor Barry Tillman, who decided not to run for re-election. During his time in office, there were battles with landlords, battles with his own allies in the council, and then 2 years ago, Ireton was re-elected along with Council President Jake Day, which paved the way for much of Ireton's agenda. Now, Day has decided to run for mayor unopposed, while Ireton seeks a spot on the city council in the 4th District. So this morning, we want to take a look back at his time in office, its significance to the city's history, and how his future plans fit in with the goals that he set out for himself when he first ran for mayor's office. And we welcome you this morning.
Good morning, Don. I'll start that over again. Good morning, and thank you for listening to Delmarva Public Radio. The mayor won his first election in 2009 with 58% of the vote and won his second election in 2013 with 68% of the vote. Tumultuous as it may have seemed.
That is true.
It seems to me that my head was at the grindstone. I put my head down. I won 110% over the last 6 years. And if an introduction like that is designed to somehow make me look back and gaze at the floor and wonder if I could have done anything differently, Mr. Rush, you're sadly mistaken. So where do you want to go from here?
Well, let's talk a little bit about when you first, as a matter of fact, when you first contemplated running for mayor, you had a certain agenda, you had certain
No, there was
allies.
A house on New York Avenue that had 150 calls for service to the police department, hookers in it, guns, prostitution. And the neighborhood that I lived in was looking for somebody to do something about that. And I took up that mantle. I think it was 221 New York Avenue. 221 New York Avenue. Took that mantle up and have done everything I could to put landlords in this town on notice that you will not single-handedly push out single-family residents because of your need to make profit.
So that was your agenda. How
still on it today.
How successful do you think that
I was going to say, I'm walking in today, and we still have landlords that are skirting the law at every given possible chance that they can. We have passed a series of legislations, I think, over the past several years, with the help of both the past three councils. It isn't just this particular council. It wasn't only the arrival of Mr. Day that made anything happen in Salisbury. Mrs. Cohen had a lot to do with some of the neighborhood legislation, even as far back as Council President Louise Smith. At times, we were able to find ways that we could bring some relief to our single-family neighborhoods. So that has always been the mantra at my office, as I'm doing every day till the last day, till sometime the third week in November. I'm doing exactly what you sent me to City Hall to do. I have not been influenced by money. I haven't been influenced by politics. I haven't been influenced by anything except single families who are trying to raise their kids, elderly people trying to live in a quiet neighborhood, people who have invested in Salisbury and need to make sure that their government is on their side.
The issue, one that doesn't seem to be resolved yet, is the non-conforming use issue. Why hasn't that been resolved, and how difficult do you think that's going to be?
Well,
are there technical issues, or what? What do you think?
99.9% of the legislation that's been in front of the Salisbury City Council that either the council has brought forward or I have brought forward has passed in the last 2.5 years. You brought up the one thing that hasn't. So that would sort of explain to you why I feel that it's time. There's really two reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's time to take a little bit of a break. 6 years is a haul. No one would refute that. In the office of the mayor, I've traveled all around this state, and it's so funny. People look at you and they're like, "Wow, you're the mayor of Salisbury." I mean, it is not for the faint of heart. It's not, and I love every single solitary minute of it. But the one thing that hasn't passed is an amortization of those houses that were 3 and 4. And even today, as we speak, over in the Camden neighborhood, we are dealing with many overoccupied houses, which we were supposed to deal with last year, but didn't because Salisbury is Salisbury politics. It's politics. You want to talk about the way it is, or you want to gloss over that? You want to do that today? Let's do it this morning. Politicians take money from landlords. Okay. And you know who they are, and the people who you're listening to know who they are, and all you've got to do is go on their campaign websites and you find out, or the city website, and find out who they get money from. So we can't really make the systemic change that we need to make until the money is taken out of politics. I have decided to limit $20 contributions, no LLCs. All of those groups that hide behind, one name, one family business, one particular landlord, and it's divided up into 18 people in their family to make sure that we can get $250 to the candidate many times over. I am in awe of the work that the Salisbury City Council has done over the last 30 months. I am not in awe of that vote about non-conforming houses. And much like many of the people who do run for seats on the Salisbury City Council, many of them are out in our neighborhoods and they go, you know what, I've got to go change this myself. I'm in the mayor's office, and to be perfectly honest with you, Don, I don't have a vote. I can hound these people. I can send code enforcement officers all I want, but they are still going to skirt the law. They're still going to try and get away with it. They're still going to try and make $6,000 and $7,000 a month while we're not looking. And then they'll come back and go, oh, Jim was supposed to do an MOU with us. How is a politician supposed to do an MOU with an industry that makes upwards of, $100 million a year in this town? So the question for me came down to is, A, what do I want to do for, the next 20 years of my life? I'm still teaching. I've started my 24th year yesterday.
Wow.
So I'm excited about that. So the question really comes down to is, where do you make the most bang for your buck while we are still dealing with 225 vacant structures in Salisbury, 173 foreclosed properties in Salisbury, 44 overoccupied properties last semester, overoccupied properties right now. It's a bad rap, and my good friend Gaines Hawkins loves to take these little pot shots at me. While the second coming of Mr. Day is now coming, we're all waiting for the second coming of Jake Day, and I applaud him, and I think he is a miraculous person. But you're going to find immediately in this office that if you don't put your foot down, they're going to run rampant over you. So what do I do? What does Jim Ireton do? You go and you have a vote. You go and you try and convince your colleagues that they are going to, that if we don't do something about the destroying of single-family neighborhoods, our assessable base is going to go to pot, and we're going to end up like all the other major large cities on the eastern seaboard here in the United States. So again, I look back on it and go, the Thrift Travel Inn got torn down. The abandoned barges got taken out of the north prong of the river. First female public works director, first neighborhood services director as a woman, first woman police chief. Crime rates, down at the 1992 levels. I choose to look back at the things that were good. Yes, there were times, and I'll be honest with you, that I rode the crazy horse into the barn that was on fire. But if anybody expected any different from me, they were sadly mistaken.
So what do you see, by the way, as if you had to point to one single accomplishment out of all, because you've listed a number of them, what do you think would be the legacy of when we're writing the last lines on who Jim Ireton was as mayor? What single accomplishment do you think you would write?
I would start to say to you that it would be the reduction in crime rates, but because I can't get you to report on them, and all you do is report about a missing person in Delaware in the morning on this station, I can't point to that because nobody knows it's happened. The rush of WBOC and WMDT, it used to be lawyers were the ambulance chasers. Now it's the media. Nobody knows that those numbers are down that far because there's a missing person every 3 minutes in this town now. There's, there is crime. There's no doubt about it. But when you take a look at the numbers, the real data-driven numbers that I have nothing to do with putting together, it would be the crime rate. It could be, the stormwater utility, and finally getting serious about cleaning up the Wycomico River, the work of the Creek Watchers and Dr. Judah Stribling, and the work of this university helping us do that. It could be the fact that for 6 years we told landlords in this town, your day is up. You had your time with every mayor before me, and I say that with all due respect to every one of them. You had your time, and you didn't have it for 6 years. So the question is, do we continue that, or do we go back to the inevitable, the fox is back in the hen house? I don't know. We need to look and see about campaign contributions, and that would be your job, not my job. It could be Barbara Duncan, bringing Barbara Duncan here from New York. Certainly she is my friend. I have an incredible amount of respect for her as a person, as a police chief, as a mom.
Right. So you've talked about that she was probably one of the best appointments you made. How do you see her transforming the police department? What do you think? What
we just graduated from the police department, the most diverse group of new police officers that we have in our history, and it's because the chief and I recognize what has happened around the country over the last several years and what people are expecting from law enforcement. It is to serve and protect and police at the same time. And Americans are having a hard time with people are doing things wrong, but there's an underlying reason why people are doing things wrong. Should we be arresting people when their lives have not been able to come up to their fullest potential? Do we take a liberal view of it, or do we take a conservative view of it with, you have to shut down crime? If crime went up, people would say shut it down. Now we are engaging our community in this conversation, about body cameras, about curfews. And we're hearing people say that there's not enough here for people. City government isn't responsible for not enough here for people. We have several issues surrounding poverty here that Thelonious Williams, who has worked in my office over the last year, who's probably the most incredible graduate of this university since me in 1992.
No modesty there.
No. Theo's got more intelligence in this part of his finger, this little pinky finger, than I have in my whole body. But what we're discovering about generational poverty and income inequality and our need to sprawl that we have done over the last 20 years, and how that has caused people to leave the inner city, all of the rentals that we have and how they have been dilapidated and torn up. We have to figure out what to do about those things. So I will say this: if I was going to tell you that there's a legacy, it's a legacy based on downtown being better than it was 6 years ago, most certainly. Neighborhoods being more protected than they were 6 years ago. The environment and the river being at the forefront of everything that we do. And the fact that, the Chamber of Commerce leaders have said in the past that some of the most important business-friendly initiatives have been passed over the last 6 years under my watch. So I wish I could tell you, I could point to one thing. If you have it on camera, you see the gray hair. It has all come very quickly. But even today, I have a curfew meeting tonight. I'm going to go meet with a group of young kids who won a soccer championship, who are from Salisbury. I'm going to try and play tennis later on courts that have got brand new lights on them for the first time in about 40 years. South Saratoga Street and Bell Avenue getting paved for the first time in maybe 60 years. There are so many tangible things. I drive down Forest Lane and I say, this has been paved for the first time in probably 50 years, but I've got a house here on the right-hand side that's abandoned and left by a landlord that we're all supposed to love and respect, and I was supposed to do an MOU with, left it sitting right there while I watched the people who live around that house watch their property values sink because people don't take responsibility for their actions. So, there are some things that are left undone, and I'm hoping that I can engage the new mayor in discussing those things in the way that I have been able to engage with him over the last 36 months. 30 months or so. I think that relationship's gonna be clear. We have to give the new mayor the ability to come up with a new vision, and I'm going to be looking for specifics and clarity. Everybody wants to be one Maryland. Everybody wants to be one Salisbury. Everybody says we should come together when something bad happens, and that's true. But where are the specifics? I'll be looking for the other council candidates in this race over the next 3 months. Are we just asking everybody to link pinks and make a caring circle so that it looks like everybody's getting along? Sometimes strife, what comes out of strife, is some of the best legislation that we could possibly have.
In terms, by the way, of your decision not to run, I covered Jake Day's announcement. There were indications he was thinking about it seriously. When did you become aware that this shift might occur, that he might very well decide to run? What can you tell us about that relationship between you and him?
The relationship between him and I is almost seamless between the two offices. It's very... One of the things that has been missing in this government over the past 25 years, and I'm going all the way back to Mayor Martin, Robin Cockey, those years, even Michael Day, is that if somebody disagreed with you, they were going to disagree with you about everything that you believed in. Everything. I can tell you now that with Council President Day, with the police chief, there are many things that I have disagreed with them on, but I have listened and realized that they make a good point. I don't agree with urban chickens. I signed the legislation anyway because Jay convinced me that this was a good thing and it will bring young people and urban farmers and a different viewpoint into the city. I don't agree with what are those things on the road that everybody hates me about? No. The speed cameras.
Speed cameras, yes.
Speed cameras. I believe you should have to get caught. Chief Duncan sits me down and says the average speed by Y-High in a 3-month study several years ago was 51 miles an hour. Do I wish those kids would walk in the crosswalk? Yes, it makes me want to roll down my window on the way to Willis in the morning and yell, if you get in the crosswalk, then you're not at fault when you get hit. I didn't believe in the speed cameras, but the police chief said this will be good for Salisbury and it will make Salisbury a safer place. So you realize that there are, Laura Mitchell, there are things that Laura comes up with when we are doing the budget that are just incredibly great ideas. It may not be what I want to do, but you have to recognize the strength, that everybody has. So there comes a point to which you have to think, am I going to do this for forever? And
right.
that really, that's really what it comes down to. I recognized about a year ago that the most important things that were in front of the city council, and all of it really is important to me. Everybody who works with me will know that there's really no level of importance with everything on that agenda. I approach everything with the same zeal. But when you start to lose some of those very important votes, while millionaires are sitting out in the audience, taking over the elected officials, because everybody's sitting out there going, the same old crew is here. The same old crew that's been here the entire time. The same old crew that was there when I won election. The same old crew that was there when the previous mayor was in office and the previous mayor before that was in office. They were all sitting there because they're all still making their millions off the back of these neighborhoods. So the question is I need to have a vote, and that meant you need to run for the city council. And actually, let's be clear, the biggest thing we probably did was come up with, without the court making us come up with it, is the second minority majority district in a city that's now 44 to 46% minority. We have more people running in that new district than any other district in Salisbury, and the court didn't make us do it. We didn't have to resurrect Billie Jean Jackson, April Jackson's father, right. April Jackson, who's running. He didn't have to come and make us do it. We did it on our own because we learned from our mistakes before. As a white man who said another minority majority district is important for a city that is going to be minority majority very soon. That to me, it just says you were raised right. I mean, it says you were raised with a set of values that said everybody's voice is important.
How do you think that is going to affect who gets onto the council and how the council will function? Because instead of having like these two big districts, now you're going to actually have a total of 5. So, right?
There's a lot of stuff going on with that. I mean, you want to talk about it, or you want me to gloss over?
Yeah, no. I mean, tell me a little bit about how
Do you think about that swath through the central eastern part of town, from up north, up in Doverdale, and then you come through parts of Church Street, over through the park, and then over into Princeton Homes. Talk about no representation, really, since Mayor Martin, over on Walston Avenue off Church Street. No representation at all. Who are you going to get? I don't know. You would say that the leading candidate would probably be Mr. Boda, because he is, and Muir, if you're listening, please laugh at this. He's run for office so many times. But in terms of name recognition, but you may not get a minority there this first time out, but people have got to knock on these doors. They've got to start knocking on the doors. I recognize my district from downtown to Newtown to Johnson's Lake to Sumter Point to Emerson Avenue and then up to the north. What are you going to get? My district now is where the Henry Parker Park Paleo Channel debate is raging now. You take a look at Shaney and April and Cynthia's race last time. If you took those numbers out, Cynthia's numbers and April's numbers, and put them together, Shaney got less votes than got fewer votes, fewer than a majority cast in the primary. I don't know how this is going to go, but I would say as a word of caution, and that the mayor-elect should be looking at that very carefully. The residents of Camden. If Mr. Heath, and I'm really just quarterbacking here for you, if Mr. Heath wins, there'll be no representative from the Camden neighborhood on the Salisbury City Council, and they have precincts with upwards of 600 people in them. It is funny. We've had these conversations before about the Camden dominance of it. It would be very interesting if Camden had nobody on there. That would be a sort of juxtaposition. We would get more people running in the new district and nobody from Camden. I'm not sure how this plays out. From what I understand, one of my opponents has withdrawn from the race. I don't really know that to be true. I met Mr. Mazzullo at the Democratic Club Crab Feast the other day, just a fine gentleman. Met him and his wife. What you want is you want to be able to have the leadership to be able to move things forward. When I won and Mrs. Smith became council president, all that was wrapped up in the politics of my election. Mrs. Cohen and Mrs. Campbell take over in the next seating of the council, and that gets bogged down, and I just can't get out of my way. The hopes that we had for Terry were incredible, but couldn't get out of her way. Leading means you have to get something done, and then I'll be honest with you, I used every power I had in the 2013 election to make sure that Mr. Day got elected, because there's a set of agenda things that I said I came here to do, and if somebody wants to help me do them, I'm damn well going to go out and make sure that person gets elected. And what I'm hoping is that it is very odd not to have a mayoral race. So the question really comes down for Jake is, do I get involved with these races? Do I find out who these people are who share the values and the vision that I have? But we need a more clear vision. I think that's coming. I really don't think all of us are really going to focus on this until about 4 weeks out.
Right, exactly.
And the university will be hosting, some forums and things of that nature. Again, for me, over the past 30 months, 99.9% of everything I wanted to do got done, except the issue, the confounding issue, the issue that goes to the heart of where we are as a city, and that's the non-conforming uses.
What do you, by the way, make of Jake Day in the sense that when I went to his announcement, I saw Republicans, Democrats, I saw a landlord or two. Everybody seems to.
What Greg Bassett has said is that as he's done this big thing where he's gone back and looked at a bunch of mayors over the last 40 years. And yes, Greg Bassett is correct that I don't necessarily get along well with the establishment, but I'm not sure who the establishment is for Greg Bassett. I'm not sure who the establishment is for Jake Day. For me, the establishment is the 2,900 people who vote in city elections, the people who pay taxes, who raise their kids here, who want to be able to send their kids to schools in the city. That's my establishment. I don't think you have to be beholden to anybody else except those people. So the question really comes down to is who will have the ear of the new mayor? And that's really a question you have to ask him. I mean, and I'm not saying he's going to have a different ear than I do. I'm saying you have to ask him that question. We've had some discussions with some journalists, Susan Parker from the Daily Times, Greg. Where are the questions? Where are the hard questions? Let me tell you, the questions you asked me in 2009 and the things that you wouldn't ask my opponent in 2013 were atrocious on the part of the media. You wanted to talk about my bedroom. And you didn't want to talk about my opponent in 2013 having racist things on his website, because that's not nice. We don't talk about those things. But you'll come at me about my bedroom. I suggest you start asking some questions. And I mean the media in general.
Okay.
Yeah, the media in general, asking those questions. You've got to start asking some hard questions. I mean, you're asking me them, so I'm hoping you're going to ask everybody them.
But one of the issues that seems to be out there,
I love when you don't want to talk about something, your voice goes right back to the change, and it just cracks me up how you do that.
The tax differential with the county.
Mm-hmm. We should be asking every one of these people running for office why it's okay for the county to take $2.2 million in fire services and not pay for it, $1.1 million in double taxation and not pay us back for it, why they want Henry Parker land for free and then don't want to fund part of the skate park through open space money. I want to have these conversations, but because people find these conversations uncomfortable, it's easy to go, Jim's just being Jim again. The new editor of the Daily Times wrote an editorial about how it was okay to use the term good old boy network, because that's what's causing this to be the way it is. And our editor of our newspaper said, good old boy network is something you should appreciate. And you can almost hear that twang in his voice. I find that incredible. And if it makes people uncomfortable for me to talk about the nuclear option and talk about the fire service agreement not getting done because people don't want change and people don't want to pay for the services they provide, I can't help you. I'm not going to go next door to my neighbor on this side and my neighbor on the other side and go, oh, well, hey, they're taking all this money from you, but they're my friends, so it's okay, it's fine. Not going to do it. I am most disappointed at the reaction of our rank and file firefighters to this particular issue, because it is money that people are really stealing from them and their firehouses. We put forth a plan, Chief Hoppus and I, that funded all the fire stations in Wicomico County equitably and the way they should be. And I can't get anybody to report on that because I used the word nuclear option and said maybe our people won't be able to go outside the city limits. That's what your genre focused on. And that's people are going to die. The Daily Times did their article. That lady was going to die because she lived 35 feet outside the city limits. The county executive stood right up at my budget message. I gave him the podium and he said, I will fix this. I will take care of it. And not a single one of you people in the media has been back to ask him why he's not doing it.
What's happened?
I don't know. It's not. You'll have to ask Council President Day.
Do you think that
you'll have to ask Council President Day? You're not going to get me to say yes or no.
I mean, do you think that the resistance is so great in county government that this thing could just simply go on forever?
I don't frame it that way. They don't want everyone to know they're taking $3.3 million, and you don't want to tell them. Go tell them. Go ask them. Put the microphone in their face and say, are you comfortable with stealing $3.3 million of city taxpayer dollars because you've just been allowed to do it for the last 50 years? Go ask them, Don. That's all I can tell you. I put it in a way that made people uncomfortable, and that made me the pariah, I guess. That made me the bad guy. They're still taking your money if you live inside the city limits. Every day, they're still taking your money and getting services that they're not paying for.
So how does and we've addressed this to some extent, how does your seeking the seat on the city council, how does that fit in with your overall agenda that you came into city government with in 2009?
I think the way that Bill Duck and I worded it was the job is not done. The job really is never going to be done, regardless of who comes into office or who goes out of office. So we still have a parking lot downtown that we have danced with developers a couple times, and we're dancing with one now to try and get about 650 people living down there, and that really will sustain all the time the businesses and the art galleries, the restaurants that are down there, but it will allow for a bigger boom. But all I can tell you is that if you went onto Main Street in 2009 at 9 o'clock in the evening, it was tumbleweeds. And it's not tumbleweeds anymore. And it's fun on Friday night, and it's fun on Thursday night, and it's fun on Wednesday night. It is absolutely incredible between the work of Third Friday and First Saturday. And really, there was probably about 8 people that said, I'm always going to come down here. And all those cars parked at those places, other people saw that and went, let's go there. You go back to really the catalyst of all of them besides Market Street, which is really the staple. You go back to Flavor's Restaurant, which turned into Mojo's. You go back into all the places that Rody Joe's was called before it was Rody Joe's. Political people coming downtown. Delegate Carl Anderton's office there now. The Democratic headquarters has been in the city center. A new speech pathology office open. The city center to me is my touchstone. It was 85% empty when I came into office, and it's 85% filled when I leave office. So, say what you want, like it or leave it, like it or lump it, as my mother would say. It has been part of our everyday spark for downtown. And with this $8 million renovation coming to all of Main Street, the ball drops at New Year's Eve, the Christmas tree lightings being huge. When you sit on the plaza on New Year's Eve and there's 5,000 people around you cheering that ball coming down, and you're not having to watch it on television, you're not having to go watch it in Princess Anne, you're not having to go do it in Baltimore or somewhere large like that, it makes you know, and it starts to change people's perceptions that these things are possible down here. 2 things had to happen. We had to begin to change people's perceptions of downtown, and we needed to bring more young people, and that's exactly what we've done.
In terms of downtown, Jake Day has described this idea about building things, and then that will then attract business to downtown. That's one of the basic proposals. And the question I raised to him is, what happens if you build it and they don't come? I mean, are you relying upon the idea that you're building something that then people will come, like businesses? Or
I will remind you that you're going to get a much more... The answer you're going to get from me is, if we were to build the Performing Arts Center and the people who are in the performing arts can't get their acts together with one another, then it will fail. See, Jake wouldn't say that because he's a better person than I am. He wouldn't say that. We know we have got to get SWAC to be with the Arts Council, to be with the community players, to be with the community band. And if those people can't get in the room, and if they're listening, they're probably cringing. Oh, goodness, he's talking about us. Yes, I am. I am talking about you. You've got to get in the room and say, this is what we can collectively do together, instead of that same old story that I've been telling you for 7 years, 8 years now, Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck coming up out of that ground, and Daffy Duck jumping on him going, mine, 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 down, 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 go, go, go. I believe in my heart that Jake Day is the person who can get those groups together and get them to come up with an agreed to list of things that they're going to do. I'm going to be that vote on the city council when Mayor Day says, in my budget is a bond floated for $1 million, $5 million, $10 million to build this Performing Arts Center. I'm going to be the first one standing up and saying, absolutely right. Jake Day will tell you that our budget for cultural arts and events for downtown ought to be $1 million a year, when it's hard to get out of any city council $7,500 a year. The people who are the places that are spending money on arts and culture are getting the rewards back. Therese Hamilton will tell you that from SWAC. Lee Whaley will tell you that from the Arts and Entertainment District. The community players people will tell you that. We've got to spend more on those things, and I think that Jake can get that job done.
And do you think that if we make something downtown that's attractive and cohesive, because it's the other thing, we've talked about this before, something that makes downtown cohesive, that then the businesses will find this as a climate to say, hey, I want to move here.
It is cheaper to buy land downtown, to rent land downtown, than anywhere on the edge. What business wants is new, and they want incentives. I believe that we should be looking at it from the flip side. If the people who lived in our town had more money in their pocket to spend in our town, that's economic development, Don. I believe, and believe me when I tell you, you're 3 months from this election and 3.5 months from swearing in day. I am nowhere near done, Don Rush. I've got more stuff coming down the pike that's going to start a conversation with our citizens about who we want to give economic mobility too? Do we want to give it to the people who already have it here, that are already making money off of all of us? Or do we want to put more money into the hands of the people who live here? It's funny. This is all starting to sound like sort of the presidential races that are going on right now. I almost said feel the burn. I'm not sure if I mean that, but I believe that we have done so much for business over the last 6 years. The business development specialists, the economic development action team, the EDU incentive area, the manufacturing tax exemption, the wastewater, all of those things, those credits, changing our paving policy that would help businesses make more money and developers make more money as they were doing their work. I really think economic development has to be about the kid who's living on Light Street and paying about $400 more a month in rent that is really fair. When we now know that our rents are higher per average than the city of Chicago, while our median income is $30,000 less than the average in Maryland. Somebody's making money off of us, Don, and you'll remember I said that at the university in 2009 when the issue of the college kids living in our neighborhoods. Somebody's making money off of us and making sure that the city argues with the college student while the person who's really making all the money off of us continues to make all the money off of us. So those systemic things, I think the EDU incentive area downtown has helped change the dynamic of downtown. Those systemic changes that we have to make in our city to really make this growth that we have seen sustainable, I don't think have come yet. And that's why I'm not willing to walk away from the building just yet. Because when I walk away from the building, I'm walking away from the building. But it will not be. It at least will be another 4 years after this year.
We've been speaking with Jim Ireton. He is the current mayor of Salisbury. He is now running for a spot on the city council. And I'm sure we will hear more from you as the years go on. And appreciate you stopping time to talk.
Thanks, Don. Let me just say that what this radio station and public radio in general and PAC 14 have been able to do for our discourse, at least in my time since 2000, really 2007, because we didn't have this back in 1996.
That's right.
When I was on city council. What you've been able to provide for your listeners, for the community, is so much more in depth than we get from the other media outlets. And I'd just like to say, on behalf of those of us that have to get interviewed by you, thank you so much.
And we appreciate you stopping by, and we will continue this conversation.
Thank you, sir.
This has been Delmarva Today. I'm Don Rush. Thanks for listening.
This has been Delmarva Today, a production of Delmarva Public Radio. Chris Rank produces and is our audio engineer. Don Rush is your host. For podcasts, visit our website, delmarvapublicradio.net, or subscribe to the Delmarva Today podcast on iTunes. Delmarva Today can now be seen on PAC 14. To view the schedule, view the daily times, or visit pac14.org.